you've been given the power to represent us as the people. The people are asking questions. In fact, the family is asking questions. Was it fair on you, our representatives, for you to stop the former president from traveling? The people need answers, Honorable Minister. What law were you using to stop the former president?
I can see you want to insist, Andrew,
to go and attend.
Yes,
his medicals.
Yes, you want to insist on,
Isn't that
on a matter.
Minister?
You want to insist, Andrew, on a matter which I have given counsel over. As I said, there are different viewpoints. You cannot use a platform of this nature. You cannot use the platform of the demise of our former president to put forward certain discussions and arguments. It is morally incorrect for us, for me, to do that. What you are saying want answers. Perhaps I would take a position that would be different from that which is put forward. Would that be befitting for a send-off for our head of state? Would that be befitting for the bereaved family to now be engaged in a back and forth? I don't think that we are morally entitled to do such. Again, I repeat my counsel. Such conversations are likely to bring division. So I'll speak to the people of Zambia out there. What we must be doing is reflecting deeply. What we must be doing is mourning our president with respect. Questions will always be there, and there will always be a time for those questions to be answered. The issue is this the right time for me to seem to take a political stance and take a position as to whether government did X, Y, or Z? No. There's a clear answer to that. My being on this program, my coming here, is as part of a function of government to explain that, as you have mentioned in your intro, the state has taken a position that there will be a state funeral. And that was announced in the correct way by the Secretary of the Cabinet. The people of Zambia will now, of course, know that the late former president will be given a send-off in accordance with the practice that we have.
Let me ask it in this way, Honorable Minister. Was there any form of assistance that was offered to the former president?
You're asking the same question in a different way, and I think I have responded.
I think the answer must be yes, government did assist, or government did not assist.
I think I have responded.
Did government assist the former president?
What are you trying to obtain by this repeated line of questioning? Which I have responded to.
Did government help
in the way that I have said we must deal with these matters?
As government, did we help the former president?
So if you ask the same question repeatedly, it will not change my answer. My answer is very clear and to the point.
My other question was
my answer is very clear
mistreated him.
And to the point.
My question now is that whether you helped him.
No. You've asked the same question. It's the same thing that you're saying it over again in the same way. Let me repeat my response to you respectfully, beg pardon. We must focus at this time. If there are questions that need to be asked, there will be a time for those questions to be asked and answered. I hope that I'm being absolutely clear. Out of respect and decorum for the process, the period that we are in, we must be able to take a point of view as a people that at some point you respect the time that you are in. What you are asking to do, to go into nitty-gritty and to go into whether or not X, Y, or Z was done, is not the way we do things as an African people, as a Zambian people. That is not how we unite ourselves. That is not how we bring ourselves together. You will agree with me, like I said earlier, in times of mourning, the first point of call, can we come together and deal with the problem at hand and see off the deceased in a way that is befitting. And by the way, when I say a way that is befitting, it is all of us that look forward
I'll be coming to that later.
It's all of us that look forward to be put to rest in a dignified and proper manner. I would not subscribe to people asking questions and seeming to get into conflict and division at the time that my funeral will be taking place.
Let's talk about, again, your trip.
For example, yes,
to South Africa, Honourable Minister. Obviously, you had among the functions, among the issues that were handed over to you by us as a people, was to see how we can repatriate our former president back, to our country, Zambia. The family has given its position that they would want him to be repatriated privately, the way he went to South Africa as an ordinary citizen privately. What is the government's position over the decision that the family has made to have the former president repatriated privately?
Yes, as you say, the family has given its position. I think government's position has been explained by the Secretary of the Cabinet in terms of the following steps that were outlined or explained by him. That national mourning has begun today, the 8th, or Sunday, the 8th of June 2025. That there will be a funeral service for the public at Belvedere Lodge, and that the remains are expected to come into the country on Wednesday. So the positions have been explained by the Secretary to the Cabinet officially. The remaining details, if there is more to be given, which of course we will expect in terms of what is to follow in the intervening period and going forward, will be explained by Secretary of the Cabinet as his functional role. So again, you are going back to the question that you asked to talk about the content and detail of our conversations, and I did explain to you from the perspective of respect for the bereaved family and for the deceased that these are matters which, and of course as a matter of process, these are matters, the nitty-gritty, the details of what will actually be done, when and how, other than also stating that what follows the state funeral is that full military honors, for example, would be given for the late former president. I think those details, which are a matter of course in terms of the precedents that has been followed, are there for the public to understand and appreciate. But for me to go into conversations and say party X said this, party Y said that, is not appropriate. And I would like to take the opportunity, by the way, Andrew, to also mention an important factor, why in fact the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and myself as minister took lead of that delegation. You recall that the late former president passed on in a foreign country, and naturally the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will play a critical role, one, in engaging the host government. And I would like to say that I'd use the platform to thank the government of the Republic of South Africa, my counterpart, Minister Ronald Lamola, for the support that they have rendered throughout this process, and that they continue to render. Certainly our counterparts in South Africa have shown Ubuntu. They've shown the graciousness that we expect to see in situations such as these, and of course passed on condolences to the people of Zambia for the demise of the former president of the Republic.
Well, that's good you've answered that, because I think there's also many schools of thought that suggested why the minister went instead of the Secretary of the Cabinet to have these discussions with the family. You speak of giving a dignified funeral to the former head of state. How does a dignified funeral look like? But also, on top of that, I'd like to find out, is government contemplating taking the body of the remains of the former president across the country, like how we did to President Levi Patrick Mwanawasa, for people to give their last respect?
Yes, thank you very much, Andrew. Again, those are matters for further discussion and consideration, but I would like to make a distinction between, of course, the immediate past president who was not in service, whereas with President Mwanawasa, may so rest in peace, was in service at the time that decision was made. But of course, it is not for me, as I said earlier, to start to fill in those details, because these are discussions that are ongoing. You asked the question, what does a dignified send-off look like? We could look at, for example, the send-off of our other former presidents. President Kaunda was given what all of us Zambians appreciated as a dignified send-off. That is what it looks like, with military honors and with the cortege and so on and so forth. But again, Costa, let us not forget that this period is one in which we say our farewells. to our former president, and not one in which we enter into even political discourse or anything of that nature. It wouldn't be befitting at all.
I know you don't want us to drag this issue into a political discourse, but is it true? I don't know if you're going to answer this question, that as you went to South Africa, one of the issues that you spoke about is the fact that President Edgar Lungu wished that government does not take part, and does not take over his funeral. Is it true?
Is that another way of asking this question as to whether we should go into details? I think you talked about the announcements that have been made, at least on the part of the family, and I also referred to the announcement that Secretary of the Cabinet Patrick Kangwa made. In your explanation of the family's statement, you did allude to the fact that there will be a state funeral. So I don't know whether that question really is either here or there, given the fact that already the nation has been updated that there will be a state funeral. State funeral, of course, is run by government.
Today is the official state funeral start. The official funeral starts today.
The national mourning.
The national mourning starts today, and government, you as government have given a position where the funeral is going to take place from Belvedere in Kabulonga. Doesn't this create a contradiction with what the family, would have loved, the funeral to look like, in terms of where the funeral takes place from? Didn't you, in your discussion, reach a point where you agreed together with the family that we would like this location to be the official funeral location?
Andrew, there is no contradiction. Again, I know you want as much as possible to draw certain inferences, but again, there is precedence that has been set. This would not be the first time that a funeral of very high level, and more importantly, a funeral of a former president is being held at Belvedere Lodge. And again, it's a sign of us learning from where we have been and trying as much as possible to ensure that there is a clear precedent of how we deal with the demise of people of high standing, such as our former presidents. This is not new. It is not the first time it has happened. There will be a book of condolences that will be opened, and that, of course, then means that the public would be able to pay their respects in a way that is befitting of a former head of state, like has happened in the past. I don't think any of us would want to detract or take away from what we have set as a people of Zambia, ourselves, as the way we send off our former heads of state. This is what we have agreed. Perhaps maybe what we should be looking at is if there any improvement in how we can send off our former heads of state. But to detract from that by saying we'll do things in a particular way, which is not how we ourselves have determined we want them done, again, we would ask ourselves, why do we want to move away from what we have done always? Why do we want to change in a backward fashion? I think it is only proper that those that want to go and mourn the president would do so at an official place that is designated for that purpose, and would be able to sign their book of condolences whilst there, therefore allowing us as Zambians to express ourselves in sending off our former head of state.
President Edgar Lungu ran a government that you took over from Honorable Minister. How best, as government, do you think this former president will be remembered?
Well, how best is, as I said already, through deep reflection, through a proper send-off, through focusing on understanding and learning as a people where we come together, where we unite, where we can be strong, even in the face of different points of view. I think that would be a befitting sort of a send-off legacy. If then we as a people, no matter our particular inclinations, are able to say that in this moment we stand together, we mourn together, we send off our former head of state together in unity. Again, regardless of any differences or perceived differences amongst us as people. Forget the political players, but even amongst us, let's not forget that out there, Zambians are grieving. Out there, Zambians are looking at this moment as a moment in history, and this should be an opportunity for us to stand together.
I asked that question in regards to the reason I said that you took over from him is obviously you understand better his legacy because you took over a government that he ran. I know you are different political lenses, but what type of legacy in terms of government does he leave behind in his death?
And I think that is not for us as administrators to answer. And this is the point I was making, and thank you for putting it in a different way. It is for the people of Zambia to sit and reflect, I keep on using the same expression, on the legacy, on any lessons we have learned, on any way in which we would want to express to one another how we should continue to live as a people. I think for us all, that should be the goal. That should be our current focus in terms of how we deal with a difficult situation such as this one. That is our duty as Zambians, much as it is the duty of government to see to it that the processes that are required to be taken for the proper send-off of the president, the former president, are taken.
Did you have, not as minister, but as a person, did you have a relationship with President Edgar Lungu? Was there any point that you spoke to President Edgar Lungu?
Well, of course, I'm a legal practitioner, and the late former president was a legal practitioner. And from that perspective, we had interaction as legal practitioners. I think from the perspective that you ask me in a personal capacity, I would speak to that because that is what comes to mind.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
I think the reason I asked that is because perhaps people would like to hear some of the memories that you perhaps shared with the former president during his time that he was on the face of the earth.
Yes, and as I mentioned, for me, since you're asking a personal
question, yes.
For me, the memories are those in our practice as legal practitioners, and we have different, of course, memories. I was much younger at the bar than the late former president. We all learn from our seniors as we practice law. That's part of how we practice law. So there are those memories that are there, of course, with regard to that from a personal perspective, since you asked the question. And again, I'm grateful that you asked that, because each of us as citizens will have different memories. We will want to put our memories now into a formative way of looking at things, a way in which these memories draw us closer to one another, draw us into a position where we stand together united in seeing off our late former president.
The remains of President Edgar Lungu arrives to in the country on Wednesday. The official, the mourning period starts today up until Saturday the 15th. What do we expect after the body of the president arrives on Wednesday?
Yes.
What follows thereafter?
Not wanting to preempt, of course, as I said, Secretary to Cabinet has got the official function of then announcing to the nation the specific steps that will be taken. Of course, he also mentioned that engagement with the family and other stakeholders continues. My expectation would be that we would follow the processes that we have done in the past when we have lost a person of high standing, which of course includes the final resting through the processes and the decorum that is followed. And I think we've got a general picture, given that we've put to rest previous heads of state that have, for example, had the casket carried in a military fashion with full honors and respect. respect, we also are aware that there will be certain processes that will be undertaken, and of course ultimately the final send-off. So I think what the people of Zambia should look forward to is a further announcement of the specific details once the body has arrived, the remains have arrived in the country, and perhaps maybe even before, the Secretary Cabinet will be able to give an ongoing update to the people of Zambia of how the funeral will take place.
What is the importance, of unity at a time such as this when we've lost the former president?
Yes, the importance of unity at all times, and particularly at a time like this, is that we are one unitary state. We literally are one Zambian family. There is a tendency for us to forget from time to time who we are as a people, what we are as a people, and the values that are important to us. And the importance of unity at this time, from my perspective, and I'm sure from the perspective of many other people, is that it reminds us of our Zambianness. It reminds us of the motto that our founding fathers put in place of one Zambia, one nation. It reminds us of the need to put aside our different viewpoints, or to put aside differences where they exist, so that we can be united in a purpose. And that purpose is for ourselves as a people to be able to say that even in times when there is perceived acrimony, even in times when there is perceived happiness and joy, that we would always defer to one norm, which is the respect of our deceased members of our families, our communities, and in this case, former president. I think that is a very important gelling factor, which reminds us of our Zambianness, and that's the importance of it.
It's good you've mentioned acrimony, because there's this perceived acrimony that is there between the opposition and the government. Just within a very short space of time, we've lost two prominent politicians in our country, former President Edith Namakwi of the FDD, and now President Edgar Lungu, former president and president of the Patriotic Front. There's been call by the church and by the opposition themselves that there must be some form of reconciliation between the current government and the opposition. Is government contemplating on, these two events of these funerals to be able to bring us as a people together through the opposition?
I don't quite understand what you mean by through the opposition, but in responding to that, I think the very essence of us as a people, us as those who are in positions of leadership, saying, let us use this moment as a moment of reflection, as a moment of us coming together, would answer that question. Of course, government has always been in a position where if there are viewpoints that must be given that might differ from government's viewpoints, we are ready to listen to those. As speaking generally, of course, this occasion does not necessarily mean that we should move away from what our focus is. Our focus right now is a befitting send-off, and the ancillary a benefit, if I can call it that, for the lack of a better term, the ancillary outcomes, I think is a better expression, is that it gives you and I an opportunity where we previously would not see eye to eye, for example, as citizens, as people, as members of different political inclinations, as members of different religious inclinations, to be able to say, okay, at this time we are putting aside that and we are dealing with a matter which is really one of national interest, of national focus. Again, I'll use the expression deliberately. I keep on harping on this because it's a time also for us to be able to say, as I indicated earlier, we are one Zambia and we are one nation. It's a time for us to be able to say we can go beyond what we feel sometimes sets us apart and come into one place, one purpose, one mind, as it were.
The reason I asked that question, Honorable Minister, is because I didn't want to brutally get this question to you, because there are concerns, Honorable Minister, that why didn't yourself, even President Hakainde Hichilema, visit his brother, when he was in hospital, when you knew that he was not well? Why didn't? Why didn't?
Again,
and I want you to put a human face to this, because
yes,
then
indeed,
we can't seem only to be united when there's an occasion like this.
No.
Even in our suffering, we ought to be united.
Andrew, you want to draw the conversation into the what ifs, the why nots, and the so on and so forth. And I know that for you, sitting in that chair, perhaps representing part of the population of the people of Zambia, it's important to ask these questions. But again, from a broader picture, there would be so many different questions that would be asked at this time from different perspectives, not just from the perspective that you have given, but there would be other contrary views. What are we doing to ourselves as a people of Zambia when we throw those into the hat at this time? What is the outcome we're trying to achieve? What is how does that feed into what we have all agreed, that this is a time for mourning? How does that assist in the process? If a response is given to your question, for example, which doesn't sit well with those that take the point of view that you have explained, what will I be doing to them at this period of time? Will I not be inflating the feelings that they already have? What will I be doing if I then take a point of view which is contrary to theirs, or allege a set of facts which is contrary to theirs? What does it do to us, to the country? Even if I have the information, assuming I had the information and the response to your question at my fingertips, please allow me to finish. What is the intended outcome of that? How does it add value to the process that we're undertaking? There will be many different people that could actually come and speak on different platforms and say different points of view. Some have already started. There are people that are issuing podcasts from within the country and outside. There are people that are offering counsel. There are some that are offering prayer. Others are giving positive. Others are giving negative. If we now start to take those point of views and tear them apart at this point and ask the questions of the sort that you're asking, how does that bring the nation into a closer position of unity? The answer is that it does not.
Perhaps it would give us an impression that you're a caring government. You're a government that looks beyond political affiliation.
Well, Andrew, if you want to talk about whether the government is caring,
if the answer was a simple yes, Honourable Minister, that the President did take time to visit President Edgar Lungu, perhaps maybe to give an impression to the people that you're a caring government.
Listen, Andrew, maybe I would want you to unbundle when you say caring government. Is there a particular criteria that is used to determine what a caring government is?
In this context, yes.
No. Why would we want to use this context to have a conversation of that nature? You have other contexts. You had a drought last year, which was threatening the lives of hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of Zambians. The response of the government to that drought would answer your question as to whether we're a caring government. Why would you want to use this particular context? Is it for the purpose of now conflating the situation? If you really want to truly ask about whether the government is caring or not, there are so many different parameters that can be used to answer that question.
For the purpose of demystifying
again, we are going back to literally you want to go into a situation where we finger point about this situation. And I think, as I said earlier, that is not morally correct. We do not and have not done that as Zambians when we are faced with a situation of development.
And I'll justify my point, Honourable Minister. I think it's for the purpose of demystifying what the position of so many people is at the moment, that you are hypocrites as government, that you now want to take over the funeral of a person that you never cared about, of a person that you mistreated, of a person that actually, when he was at the airport, when he was traveling to South Africa, you actually ordered that he must be removed from a plane. And so, to demystify some of these myths and misconceptions that the people have, I'm asking that, is it true that government never cared for our former president? Is it true that government mistreated our former president? We have an opportunity to speak to you as a government official to give a correct position of what happened or of what is happening, and that's why I'm advancing those questions to you, Minister.
I think you have heard the expression, Andrew, and the people of Zambia out there, that to every season there is a reason, and everything has got its own time. Your question could be asked at a different time from the time that we are in now. Perhaps if people want to take that conversation, there is an appropriate time for it to be had. To ask that now, I think is, as I said earlier, not befitting of the situation we're in as a people. The focus should be on mourning. As I said and indicated to you earlier, supposing that point of view is taken and responded to in a radical sort of way, which does not which is opposed to the views that you have expressed, what does that do? Then you are using this situation we are in as a opportunity for conflating. This one says this and pulls in that direction. The other one says this and pulls in that direction. The other one pulls. We are, just as this diamond is here that you've put, you create a situation where there is disharmony amongst us as Zambians because we are all pulling different directions. The purpose of coming to this platform is to unite, is to counsel, is to use the opportunity to say that as government we are looking at this as a situation when we must focus on this particular aspect that I have, of course, repeatedly mentioned. Otherwise, we'll be doing a disservice to ourselves as a people of Zambia. And I'm grateful that you ask these questions, but also I would want to use the opportunity to say that there will be different viewpoints out there. There are many viewpoints that are opposed, for example, to those that you have put across. If they were to voice out the way others would want to voice out, what does it do to us? I'll keep on asking that question for the benefit of the people of Zambia and those beyond that are looking at that. Yes, there will be many questions all the time in our everyday lives, and those many questions are always will be at the foremost of our minds from time to time. But now we are here. We have found ourselves in a situation where we have lost our former president. I think all of us should say those questions can be answered at a different time if they need to be answered at that material time. For now, it doesn't help the process that we are undertaking. As a people, together, we are mourning. Let us mourn in dignity and in peace.
You mentioned earlier that there's a number of lessons we've learned, from the past presidents. President Edgar Lungu was the last surviving former president that, we had as a country. What lessons, as a government, are we learning, from these past presidents, that have gone to be with the Lord, especially in terms of how we handle the affairs of the office of the former president?
What lesson have subsequent governments learned, I think is your question,
Yes.
because to focus only on the particular administration that is currently in office would be, not so helpful.
Yeah.
I think, to answer your question, we have learned from the time that we have seen our leaders at the highest level passing on a few lessons about the importance of that office. The importance, for example, if you talk about President Kaunda, of being able to pass on knowledge, being able to pass on statehood through the office of a former president. You will see, for example, that President Kaunda was made recognized outside of these borders, was made a champion, an ambassador of different causes. I think we have learned through the process of being Zambian. The various administrations have learned also why it's important to have a befitting send-off for former presidents or presidents that have died in office. And you would see that this has been carried on, for example, through some of the gestures that government would give, like an official funeral, like burying at Embassy Park, and putting up the physical structures that show that we remember our former heads of state in a manner that we ought to remember them. I think we have increasingly learned that, and I think that is very important, that institution is given the decorum that it ought to be given in life, that it received, the institution of presidency, that is to say, and of course also in death, that we remember our fallen former heads of state through, as I said, for example, the gesture of burying in a particular place that is recognized as being befitting.
How much pressure are you receiving as government? It's for the first time that we're having a funeral of this nature, especially that we are now talking about the death of an immediate past president. What type of pressure, does this put, on your government in terms of how to handle the funeral?
I'm not sure whether I understand the term pressure correctly. My belief is what you're expressing when you say pressure is where do we feel we must put an effort to ensure that things are done properly. I think that's how I'll take it. And of course, that in that context, with any sort of situation of this nature, and I assume that those that have dealt with a difficult situation like this before would have felt the same need to ensure that there is a correct and proper send-off. You, for example, would want to imagine that those that had to handle the funeral of late President Mwanamasa, may he so rest in peace, who died in office, would have a similar sort of approach. How do we ensure that the whole nation is able to see that we are putting in what we must as a people to sending off our former president. So from that perspective, of course, there is also the aspect of the expectations of the people that are mourning out there. What do you and I want to see as in terms of the putting to rest of our former president? Those, of course, would be aspects that we are dealing with every day, because there will be phone calls. From the perspective of foreign affairs, for example, there are numerous messages that are coming from around the globe. First of all, in condolence. Secondly, for those that are looking to attend the official funeral, they're asking for the details and so on and so forth. So those are some of the everyday aspects that we'll deal with as government, which perhaps would refer to as pressure. And again, having spoken of the foreign element, it gives also impetus to this state funeral, because the whole world literally will be watching what we do as Zambians, whether we pull ourselves apart in a moment like this or unite. And it's important that we, from a perspective of foreign affairs and international relations, that we are able to show our partners that what we say we are as Zambians is truly the fact. We are one Zambia, one nation, and in moments like this, difficult times like this, we are able to pull together. I think that also is important.
As we conclude the program, what would be your last remarks to the people of Zambia, to the family, and generally, to everyone that is looking at government and what next government would do?
Thank you. The message, of course, will continue to be one of condolence, that as government and, of course, as individuals, Zambians who are bereaved in this moment, that we must use this time to remember our Zambianness, to remember the importance of unity. Remember the importance of being able to set aside our different viewpoints and focus on a moment which, whilst a sad moment, would also be a moment of, if I can use the expression, pride for us, that we are able to see off our former president in a way that is befitting, that we are able to come together in that moment and mourn and reflect deeply that we have our former president that had served this country and must be given the send-off that is befitting.
Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, State Council Mlambo